We have two calculators that have been recommended for this course, and I'm going to show you how to use these calculators involving the trigonometry functions. So one of the things that you want to make sure is that your calculator is in the correct mode, and this is the TI-84 Plus, but it also has the same buttons on it as the TI-83, the TI-83 Plus, so this is that particular series. So if you hit mode on your calculator, you're going to see, and you can look at my big screen here instead of the little bitty tiny screen, but you can see a menu that will appear. Now, if you have an old operating system, yours may look slightly different than this, but you want to make sure that for the problems that you're doing here, that degree is selected on your calculator. These other menus may not appear on some of the older operating systems, but this one, simply the math print at the top, is where your fractions will appear up and down instead of sideways. Make sure that it's in normal mode. Float will appear on both of these calculators, and you want to make sure that you have float selected. If you select any of these, it limits the number of decimal places that you will see, and so things like 3.2 times 6.4, if you don't have the correct decimal selected, you may end up with the wrong answer. For our problems, we want to make sure that degree is selected. So I'm going to go down with my arrows and slide over to degree and hit enter, and that's how we change something on here. You want to make sure for your calculator that real is highlighted. So make sure that those things are highlighted. These you may not see if you have an older operating system. You can see the fraction type, whether it gives you as top-heavy fractions or as mixed numbers. So you can change that if you happen to have that menu if you want to. Answers as automatic. If you leave it as auto, it will give different kinds of answers. If you change these, it will give all fraction answers or all decimal answers. So you probably want to just leave it as auto. So that's what the mode should look like on here. If you want to get out of this screen, you hit second and mode, which says quit up above it. So there are three trig functions on this calculator. You will not see all 6 of them because secant, cosecant, and cotangent are just reciprocals of sine, cosine, and tangent. So these are the buttons for sine, cosine, and tangent. If you want to find the sine of a particular number, like let's say I want to do sine of 30 degrees, I would hit sine and I would type my 30 in there, and since my calculator is in degrees, this would be 30 degrees, and I would hit enter and it would tell me the sine. If I wanted to hit cosine of 30 degrees, that would give me the cosine. If I wanted to hit tangent, that would give me the tangent. There are some things that are undefined, and it's because of dividing by 0, because these functions, remember, are just proportions. They're ratios and proportions. So if I hit tangent of 90 degrees, I'll get an error message, and that just means that you would put your answer as undefined if you saw something like that. So let's go back out of this. If you're trying to find the actual angle, so let's say I know that my sine value is 3/4 and I'm trying to find the angle with it. This little key up above the sine is the inverse sine key. So I would hit second sine to access the inverse, and then I would put my actual sine that I know inside the parentheses, and I would hit enter, and it would tell me that roughly 48.6 degrees is the angle that I'm looking for. So if you need to go backwards and find the angle, it's these inverse keys you're looking for. So if I told you that the tangent was 0.53 and you're trying to find the angle, I would hit inverse tangent 0.53, and it would give me the angle of roughly 27.9 degrees. And see, if I hit tangent of 27.9, it gives me approximately 0.53. So that's how that calculator works. Let's pull the other one up. This is the other one that I've recommended for your particular class. This is the smaller of the two, but it still has the 3 trig functions on it. And for both calculators, I'll show you in just a minute how to deal with the reciprocal functions. But you can notice on this one it says it's in radian measure, and if we're dealing in degrees we'll need to hit mode and change that. I'm going to need to highlight degrees. It also has the decimal on it, and it has normal, scientific, and engineering. You want it to be on normal and you want it to be on degrees. So I'm going to hit enter. I'm going to quit and go back. You can see your 3 buttons for your sine, cosine, and tangent. So again, if I did sine of 30 degrees, it would give me 1/2, and this calculator gives it to me in fractions. So this button here will change things to decimals if I would prefer a decimal. So it goes back and forth with that. If I had cosine of 30 degrees, again, it gives me the exact answer, and if I want the decimal, I would hit that button. If I know the sine, the cosine, or tangent, and I want the degrees, so if I hit 0.5, if I know that the cosine or the sine is 0.5 and I want to know the angle, I would hit inverse sine 0.5. And it would give me the angle is 30 degrees. So the inverse function is where you get the actual angle measure out of it. If I want to know the secant, the cosecant, or the cotangent, remember that cosecant is the reciprocal of sine. So if I wanted to know the cosecant of 30 degrees, I would need to use the reciprocal measure, which means take a 1 and divide. So 1 divided by the reciprocal measure. So if I'm trying to find the cosecant, the reciprocal is sine. So I would hit sine of 30. And so this notation shows you that it's the reciprocal, and then the reciprocal function is sine. So this would be the cosecant. So I would hit enter, and it would tell me that the cosecant of 30 degrees is 2. The other way that I can do that is I can go ahead and do the sine of 30, which is 1/2, and if I flip 1/2, it gives me 2. So it is the reciprocal function of that. So cosecant, secant, and cotangent work that way when you are using the calculator. So if you want the angle, you use these inverse functions, so you'll have to use the second function key to access them. If you want the actual sine, cosine, and tangent, use these buttons. If you want cosecant, secant, or cotangent, you flip them, or you say 1 divided by that function. So that's how those work on the calculator.